Black Widow is an often underappreciated character in Marvel Comics, at least in my opinion. The original from 616 is clearly the best there is, but what about the other Black Widows out there in the multiverse? Okay, so this alternate reality version of Natasha Romanoff isn't exactly more powerful than her regular self, but she's the leader of the Soviet super soldiers, defending the island of Genosha against Magneto and his mutant uprising. Now she doesn't really show up for very long, not very long at all actually, but seeing this Black Widow leading a team consisting of the biggest Russian superheroes including Crimson Dynamo, Ursa Major, and Red Guardian is just awesome. Not to mention, assuming the Scarlet Witch gave Natasha what she wanted, this is her dream come true, which is just really interesting to think about. Hold up, you're a Black Widow fan, bro? Name 3 of her best comics in the comments below right now, bro. I bet you can. Number 9. Madame Natasha. Earth 15061, Uncanny Avengers Ultron Forever #1 in May of 2015 had Black Widow form the Avengers Initiative in the wake of Zero Day, which is an event during which Thanos invaded Earth and took the lives of roughly half of its heroes. The heroes who were left were mobilized by Natasha and managed to stop Thanos, taking him out through a combination of magic and science. Natasha's team expanded over the following years and continued operating 30 years into the future. We can assume she has the same abilities as Natasha normally possesses, but being the leader of a group of incredibly powerful heroes like Thor, King Hulk, Daniel Cage, Captain America, and Iron Mariner, she has got access to a large number of resources that just push her to another level that helped her and the other heroes to take down Thanos. Number 8. Black Widow 2099. Like most characters from the 2099 universe, Black Widow is also hella cool. This Black Widow is a woman named Tanaya, and she is a somewhat more literal Black Widow than other versions. Tanaya was a serial taker of lives, with her MO being that she would consume her prey after sleeping with them. For some ungodly reason, she is approached by Alchemax CEO Miguel Stone to become a member of their Avengers. She carries around 2 stingers and fangs as her main tools of the trade, and her costume also features a mask with numerous red eyes, like the actual Black Widow spider. I said she's awesome, but she is still very scary and a very interesting version of this character. Number 7. Ava Orlova. Ava Orlova, who first appeared in Mockingbird's Shield 50th Anniversary #1 in September of 2015, is the Red Widow in Marvel Comics. While not exactly an alternate version of Natasha, she is close yet different enough for me to feel like it's worth mentioning her. Natasha rescued Ava from the Russian mob as a child, and she now refers to her as her little sister, though there is no actual family connection, and despite the fact that Natasha never actually came back for her and kind of left her abandoned. Ava is a much more aggressive widow than Natasha is, rarely showing any of the discipline of the older spy, and using an advanced system of electrical powers which she channels through her weapons. I think she's really cool, but we haven't really seen too much of her yet, and hopefully that changes. Number 6. The Red Cat. In the symbiote Spider-Man alien reality story, we get a reality where things transpired quite a bit differently, with Kraven the Hunter dressing like Jungle Jim, Hobgoblin is the Sorcerer Supreme, and rather than become a super spy, Natasha Romanoff became a jewel thief known as the Red Cat. Yes, like instead of Black Cat. She shares a romance with Spider-Man and seemingly has all Black Cat's abilities as well. The story itself focuses on Spider-Man and explores the Secret Wars era of Marvel Comics from 1985 when Peter Parker first got his black suit. But the Red Cat is absolutely a highlight of that story. Number 5. Earth 666. First appearing in Secret Avengers number 33 in October 2012, this Black Widow is a member of the supernatural Avengers of Earth 666. Her exact supernatural status is unknown, but it was confirmed that all residents of that reality are either dead or undead in some way. And Natasha specifically, well, she appears to be part human and part actual real spider. I'm assuming it's a Black Widow, but ultimately she's a humanoid spider and presumably has all the benefits that come with that, including fangs, multiple eyes, a monstrous pair of hands and feet, and for that reason she winds up here as at least more powerful than a regular Black Widow. The hero, not the arachnid. Number 4. Spider-Woman. The Ultimate Universe is not exactly the greatest. It has its moments, but it's definitely a little divisive. One thing I think most people enjoy about it would be the version of Spider-Woman. Actually, most of Spider-Man related things are well liked in this universe, but we ain't talking about him. On Earth 1610, Jessica Drew is a clone of Peter Parker who becomes Spider-Woman, but after the original Black Widow in the Ultimate Universe, who was utterly horrible and rather evil, and the second Black Widow, Monica Change, Jessica became the third iteration of the character on 1610 with her Spider-Woman powers. Jessica as Black Widow forms the all-new Ultimates and begins living with her teammate and friend, Katie Pryde. Number 3. Widowmaker. What if Fantastic Four #1, coming out in December of 2005, takes place on Earth 717 in 1951? The Soviet Union sends its first manned mission to space. Natalia was one of the 4 astronauts involved. Now, all 4 of them were bathed in cosmic radiation and gained superhuman powers. In her case, Natalia gained the ability to manipulate electromagnetic energy, allowing her to fly by reversing the polarity of her body, and also making her able to discharge her energy in lethal doses. The 4 became the ultimate Federalist freedom fighters, or if you prefer, and I do not blame you whatsoever, you can just call them the Soviet Fantastic Four, because that's basically what they are. I'll accept that. With the US and what becomes Russia disputing over control of Cuba, the freedom fighters were tasked with facing the Avengers. Thankfully, Rudy and Richards chose to abort the mission when a teammate got wounded. The same Richards confronted his superiors in the KGB, and tired of his heroic talkbacky ways, the leaders ordered Natalia to terminate Richards. But she instead chose to take them down. Following the incident, the super agents took control of the Union and pursued the ideas of freedom and equality. Number 2. Clairvoyant. Clairvoyant is actually the first Black Widow. Claire first appeared back in the golden age of comics in Mystic Comics #4 in 1940. During World War II, many superheroes were drafted into the military, specifically in order to boost support in the United States. The real military hired Timely Comics, who would go on to become Marvel Comics, to create comic book heroes as propaganda to gain support in the war, and the Black Widow was one of many heroes, but clearly this isn't Natasha Romanoff. Clairvoyant, the first Black Widow, is among the most powerful magicians in the Marvel Universe. After Claire's passing, Satan brought her body to his realm and revived her as his supernaturally powered operative, the Black Widow, to perform as his personal assassin, taking down evil mortals so that he could draw strength from their souls. She would be integrated into the Marvel Universe proper in 2005 as part of the 12 miniseries. And in at number 1 is Worthy Black Widow. Black Widow from Earth 23223 in What If Age of Ultron #3 in 2014 was a member of Colonel Fury's Defenders team stationed at Castle Doom in Latveria when they were invaded by an army of frost giants and other creatures who originated from Asgard. But then the Midgard serpent himself showed up. Thor mysteriously fell while fighting the serpent, and so, while the others used themselves as a distraction for the serpent, Natasha managed to pick up Mjolnir in her last moments and gain the powers of Thor. She defeated the world serpent Jormungand and all the other forces of Asgard, seeming to pass on in the battle. But Natasha was revealed to be alive when her planet was next invaded by Ultron 1320 from a parallel world. The alternate reality heroes fought Ultron and then ended up forming the Avengers Infinity.
At number 10 we have Kingpin. Now I know Kingpin is actually Daredevil's enemy in the comics, but in Spider-Gwen's reality the moniker is actually held by Matt Murdock himself. And considering Kingpin has always been extremely powerful on his own, an amalgam of the two characters creates something pretty impressive as well. With the same training and heightened senses as Daredevil, he's got everything that the character has always had, but he's also got the power of the criminal organization, the Hand, under his thumb. In this reality as well, Kingpin gains access to the multiverse, giving him the power to travel between realities at will, which adds quite a boost to his power set. So yes, Kingpin from Earth 65 at number 10. Before I go on, see if you can guess the rest of this list in the comments. Try and comment at least one variant that you think I'll mention later, and we can see if you get it right. Alright, let's keep going. At number 9 we have Ultimate Daredevil, the first one. In the Ultimate Universe, or Earth 1610, Daredevil appears to be a much more gruesome fighter than his 616 counterpart, and gives into rage and fury much more easily. And although this doesn't necessarily mean he's got a heightened strength level, it surely acts as a motivator for him to reach his full potential on command. This version of the hero also relies on his club for combat situations, using it as a walking stick when blending in as a civilian or otherwise. Ultimate Daredevil does end up dying, but it's not necessarily due to a lack of power. This guy packs a punch, no matter which way you slice it. At number 8 is Elektra. If I have my facts straight, I believe Elektra is currently holding the title of Daredevil in the comics, and her run as the hero has been nothing but an upgrade for Elektra herself. Considering Elektra is already a very powerful hero by her own right, when she becomes the Daredevil while Matt Murdock is in prison, she starts completing some near impossible feats that she may have never been capable of before. Driven by her desire to show Matt that she is truly on the side of good, she goes on to protect Hell's Kitchen from threats such as the Null's invasion and an incident where Bullseye enlists clones of himself to fight against her. Now, Matt is out of prison and the two heroes fight side by side, both honing the mantle of Daredevil at once. And if you ask me, Elektra is more powerful than ever in her current state. At number 7, we have the Zombieverse Daredevil. This version of the hero should be considered because even though it's a fleshy corpse that probably doesn't have a huge defense stat, it does have the ability to effectively transform any other living being into an ally with a simple bite. And since we're effectively ranking the power set of each of these variants, the added abilities that zombification gives to this version of the hero should be considered as much as any other power boost. Not to mention, the zombie Daredevil basically has immortality, unless I suppose its body is entirely destroyed, but no matter how you splice it, immortality is immortality. At number 6, we have the original Earth 616 Daredevil. Although 616 Daredevil has the typical power set, which might not be comparable to the zombie immortality or the Kingpin variant's multiversal travel, his sheer track record is enough to prove that his abilities are worth at least a 6th spot on this list. Some of these feats include his introductory battle with Namor, who compliments him as one of his most impressive human counterparts, and the time he breaks through Stiltman's reinforced armor, or even in the Shadowland crossover when he finally kills Bullseye almost effortlessly. Also, Earth 616 Daredevil is the same variant that has appeared in Frank Miller's Daredevil series, the Daredevil Yellow comics, and even arguably the Daredevil TV show. So he has a ton of experience under his belt and has kept up with some of the most powerful beings in the world. And for someone who is typically known to not have any real superpowers, that's pretty powerful. At number 5, we have the Ray Connor Ultimate Daredevil variant, aka the Vampire Daredevil. After the first Daredevil's demise in the Ultimate Universe, Roy Connors takes over the mantle as the Blind Vigilante. Except there's one small change which makes a massive difference in the grand scheme of things. Ray Connor has been bitten by a vampire and now possesses the superpowered power set that Daredevil has always deserved. His strength, stamina, and reflexes get an artificial boost, bringing him up a handful of notches in relation to his enemies. And of course, he's also given the ability to turn his enemies into vampires with one bite. The only downside is that he does become vulnerable to sunlight, but he usually does his business at night anyway, so it's not such a bad downside overall. At number 4 is Dare the Terminator from the Marvel DC crossover. This version of the hero gets a higher spot on the list because she harnesses the powers of both Deathstroke and Daredevil all at once. And moreover, since the crossover gives this character a new origin story about how she gets the Daredevil powers, she gets even more powerful than Matt Murdock. And this is because the Daredevil abilities are acquired through scientific genetic experimentation instead of by a freak accident. So with Deathstroke's powers and even augmented versions of Daredevil's abilities, we get a much more powerful iteration of the hero, who isn't quite a hero anymore either. Her evil instincts persist, and she often uses severe means to defeat her enemies, taking out Enigma Fisk with little effort and no mercy either. At number 2, we have Daredevil 2099. Now we're getting into a territory where these variants have upgrades that make them objectively more powerful than the original mortal Daredevil. On Earth 2992, the 2099 universe brings us a brand new and very powerful variant of Daredevil who is commandeered by Kingpin's grandson, Samuel Fisk. Just like Daredevil, this variant isn't technically gifted with any extra superpowers, but he does have one massive upgrade that puts him high up on this list, and that is his full body suit of armor, which offers strength, agility, and durability boosts, as well as an arsenal of weapons that he can call upon on command. The suit comes with 2 pistols, as well as his classic billy club, and it even has targeting capabilities coded into it, offering support in aiming his pistols when needed. And even further, the rocket boots that he has with the suit give him an increase in jumping height and distance, which personally starts to make Daredevil 2099 give me Iron Man vibes. With his Batman-like car that offers even more benefits to his abilities, Daredevil 2099 had to make a splash on this list, if not for power points, then for sheer coolness points. At number 2, we have David Jarrett from the Earth X universe. Aside from being one of the most powerful on the list, this variant has to be the most terrifying looking as well. After coming in contact with the Terrigen Mists, Jarrett gains immortality and an incredible healing factor, as well as the ability to actually create clones of himself on command. He rides around on a motorcycle, which I know doesn't help his power, but should be mentioned since it adds a lot to his mobility potential. But either way, as far as Daredevil variants go, anyone with immortality and regeneration deserves a high spot on this list, especially since the original Daredevil variant already shows some extreme power without any actual superpowers. It also doesn't appear that David Jarrett has any loss of eyesight, which should be seen as an upgrade when talking about Daredevil. Finally, at number 1, we have Dark Devil. In Dark Devil's case, he's got a connection to Zarathos, a demon from an alternate dimension who empowers Dark Devil from within his body. This allows this version of the hero to explore much more mystical capabilities than Daredevil ever has before. Like for instance, the ability to turn his whole body into flames, which gives him a power boost as well as a durability increase. On top of all this though, believe it or not, Dark Devil even shows signs that he has some version of Spider-Man's powers. This is because he first appears in Spider-Girl issue 2, which takes place on Earth 982. And with these Spider-Man-like powers, he is even capable of sticking to walls and somehow using a power similar to Spider-Man's Spidey sense, which paired with his demonic influence from Zarathos makes for an extremely overpowered variant of Daredevil.
Number 10. Peter Parker of Earth 92100. You'd think the addition of extra arms for a Spider-Man would be an added benefit. When it happened to Peter in the 616 universe, he panicked and got rid of it with the DNA of Morbius. Understandably. But on Earth 92100, Morbius did not live long enough to help Peter, being eaten by sharks of all things. And since no one else could, Peter kinda had to just deal with it. Turns out, during a fight with Doc Ock, after Peter embraced his extra appendages, they actually give him a distinct advantage. They actually grant him much more strength and agility, and using them, he is even able to save Gwen Stacy from her demise. Unfortunately, they don't really protect him from the inheritors. Spider Limbs here sacrifices himself to save Spider-Man 2099 and Lady Spider in Spider-Man 2099 Volume 2 Number 6 in 2014. Number 9. Spider Assassin. Do you know how effective Spider-Man would actually be if he was a little less moral but still a crime fighter? Pretty effective. And while we've seen a few different examples of this, I chose to pull from What If? Spider-Man vs. Wolverine number 1, where we are introduced to Spider Assassin. In his universe, with great power comes great responsibility and greater enemies, which led this Peter of Earth 8351 to leave New York to protect his family. He joined up with Wolverine, and likely because of this friendship, he is much less opposed to sending criminals to the afterlife. He's also almost always serious, not resorting to quips and jokes to cope with situations anymore, which is reflected in his costume, which is a much darker look, especially with those black eyes. I really dig it. His web shooters have also been shown to shoot black webs in some panels, and they also include firearms. He is an effective addition to the Spider Army when it was formed, and an extremely effective Spider-Man indeed. Number 8. Spider's Man. Alright, yeah. Nope, not a fan of this one. You ever seen those videos of people finding spider nests where it's literally a swarm of spiders? Yeah, okay, imagine that, but they're super powered and come together to take on a human form. Now you've got the terrifying Spider's Man, which, side note, that's a great name. In Spider-Geddon number 3 of 2018, we are introduced to a colony of radioactively powered spiders who consumed a high school boy by the name of Peter Parker when he fell into their enclosure at Horizon Labs. After consuming Peter, the spiders gained a sort of hive mind in Peter's image and began fighting crime in Cruel York of Earth 11580. Other than his usual Spider-Man powers and the benefits of being a swarm of spiders, the colony is also able to poison its victims with a bite, or, if they're hungry for power, devour them whole. And it's incredibly hard to actually de-life this guy, as even a single spider being alive means technically Spider's Man is also still alive and can multiply to rebuild itself. Number 7. Spider UK. the first Spider-Man mashed with another Marvel hero. These mashups always make for powerful characters. Basically, Spider UK is William Braddock, hailing from Earth 833. If you haven't gathered from the Braddock namesake, Spider UK is what would happen if Spider-Man was Captain Britain. As such, he is part of the Captain Britain Corps, being introduced in the Edge of Spider-Verse Volume 1. He is also part of the Spider Army put together to take on the Inheritors, and a pretty important part of it, he was not only an amazing leader but also had a very useful dimension hopping ability. Unfortunately, this Spider-Man didn't actually have a spider sense, which is probably what allowed him to be de-lifed by an attack from behind in Spider-Geddon number 1. Number 6. Spider-Man 2099. Probably one of the most loved characters on this list. The Spider-Man of Earth 928, Miguel O'Hara, or as he's better known, Spider-Man of the dystopian future of 2099. This version of Spider-Man has many similar abilities to 616 Peter Parker, but some that are not so similar. He has super speed, which is actually capable of somehow creating a decoy. His spider sense allows him to telepathically communicate with others. He has accelerated vision, he has retractable talons, and also has fangs that he can use to paralyze others. And he has the famously disgusting organic spider silk spinnerets on his wrists. He first appeared as a preview in Amazing Spider-Man number 365 in June of 1992, and in his own series in Spider-Man 2099 number 1 in September 1992, and he is a titanically awesome character. Number 5. The Spider of Earth 15. There are a lot of characters who go by the Spider, but specifically, I'm talking about the one that's bonded with the Carnage symbiote who comes from Earth 15. The Spider of Earth 15 is a much more sadistic, sociopathic, red-headed version of Peter Parker, which is proven by the fact that he has been sentenced to a total of 67 life sentences in prison for the crimes he has committed. To make him just a bit more lovable, he has a sense of humor very much like that of Deadpool. The Spider was introduced in Exiles number 12 and was a big part of the reality-conquering Weapons X team featured in it, being a sometimes leader of that team. As a Carnage-bonded sociopath, he was pretty powerful, but he was nonetheless sent to the afterlife by a blast from Firestar in Exiles number 44. Number 4. Poison. From one symbiote to another. Every time that pesky Venom symbiote would try to merge with Peter Parker, he would only get halfway before Peter could repel him. Now, what happens if Peter Parker is defeated by Venom, who completely bonds with him? In the What If Spider-Man the Other story, after Peter is defeated by Morlun and cocoons himself under Brooklyn Bridge, he is offered the chance to be resurrected by the Spider God. But instead of allowing this, he refuses and is ejected from his cocoon non-resurrected. Cut to Venom, who, being Spider-Man's crazy ex-girlfriend, senses what is happening and completely ditches his current host. He intercepts Peter's body and after months of struggling, fully bonds to Peter. Now, Peter has all the fully realized powers that come with being a symbiote, but he actually has stingers that are capable of piercing the skin of Luke Cage, which is pretty insane. Number 3. Spider-Hulk. The second Spider amalgam here. Spider-Man of the Immortal Hulk with Great Power story is granted the alter ego of the Hulk after Loki magically transferred the Gamma power to him. So it's Spider-Man's relative spider powers mixed with an unstoppable green monstrosity with the temperament of a toddler. It's actually really cool. Eventually, the power of the Hulk is switched back to Banner with the help of the Fantastic Four and Banner's own genius. It's a short little story that seems almost self-contained, but it's an insanely cool one, and a Spider-Hulk would be an incredibly powerful character if he were to show up again and had more time to hone his abilities and temper tantrums. Number 2. Ghost Spider. The last Spider-Man mashup with other heroes, but nonetheless possibly one of the most powerful potential mashups. Also, in my opinion, the coolest looking one. Also, it appears that Uncle Ben leaving this plane of existence is actually a really good thing. See, on Earth 11638, Ben never loses his life to a mugger, and he helps train Peter with his powers and helping him form Parker Industries. Peter and Uncle Ben end up building a machine that allows Peter to lure alternate versions of Spider-Man to this reality where he absorbs their powers to increase his own. That kind of took a dark turn, didn't it? But when he tried to do this to the apparently most powerful Spider-Man from Earth 616, he is de-lifed and his soul is sent to hell, where, with the assistance of the Infernal Hulk, he is fused with the spirit of vengeance, becoming the Ghost Spider. If you know anything about Ghost Rider, you know how actually insanely powerful he is, even going toe-to-toe with Galactus at one point. So yeah, This Spider-Man slash Ghost Rider guy is potentially extremely powerful. Number 1. Cosmic Spider-Man. There was a point in time when Peter Parker of Earth 616 absorbed the Enigma Force and became the most powerful version of Spider-Man we have ever seen, even capable of punching the Hulk into orbit. In the mainline continuity, he doesn't have it for very long. But on Earth 13, he kept the powers and became the hero Captain Universe. So, this Peter Parker has all the usual Spider-Man powers, but also now has cosmic awareness where he can sense things on a subatomic level and from crazy distances. He has energy manipulation, giving him energy blast and flight. He also used his abilities to manipulate matter, making his webs as strong as adamantium, or even changing their shape altogether. His universe became a safe haven for all the Spider-Men when the Inheritors were hunting them, because Captain Universe could defeat them, and his cosmic powers are gone when he leaves that dimension. Unfortunately, he is consumed by Solus, who used the life force basis of his powers against him in Amazing Spider-Man number 11 in 2014. He's still cool though.
At number 10 is Feral Wolverine. This version of the hero is not given added power by any upgrades or magical augmentation, but by his own sheer will to cause harm. What happens is that Wolverine's adamantium is ripped out by Magneto through the pores of his skin, which is, of course, very painful and traumatic. So he gets extremely angry and loses all control as he's thrown into a blind rage to get revenge on Magneto. But aside from Wolverine's pain-driven fury, Magneto actually activates a new mutation that he didn't know was being held back by the adamantium in Wolverine. And this mutation basically turns him into an animalistic version of himself that is closer to an untamed beast than his usual strategic and tactically aware self. The only downside of this version of Wolverine is that he's so unhinged that he's not able to control any strategic approach to battle. At number 9 is Helverine. When the Red Right Hand sets their sights on Wolverine, acting on their strange grudge against him specifically, they banish Logan's soul and replace it with that of a demon. So, a demonic version of Wolverine is created and makes the superhero even more powerful, sending him into a demonic rage, killing many of Logan's friends in one bloody frenzy. It takes a lot of effort for the X-Men to finally subdue Helverine, requiring the whole team alongside Jean Grey as well as Logan's own soul to battle the demon out of Wolverine's body for good. This version of Wolverine shows how strong it is in a very short time, leaving Logan's friends and us readers alike hoping that the Red Right Hand will finally just leave Logan alone. At number 8 is Laura Kinney. Laura Kinney is the result of a top secret program that makes an effort to create another Wolverine. But when they can't find a subject to survive the process of bonding the adamantium to their bones, they decide to just clone Logan himself. But during this process, the Y chromosome is damaged and they instead create a female clone that they call X-23. She only has the 2 claws on either hand, but that typically isn't a hindrance for her since she does get empowered by the Enigma Force a number of times. And if you're not already aware, the Enigma Force is what gives Captain Universe his power. So Laura is really not to be messed with. She's also just a great fighter on her own, and she eventually escapes the lab and becomes a very successful hero by her own right. At number 7 is Lord of Vampires Wolverine. In What If number 24, Wolverine is bitten by Lord Dracula, which turns him into a vampire. And after some biting and killing as a blood-sucking ghoul, Wolverine decides he has to kill Lord Dracula and become the Lord of the Vampires himself. Then Wolverine goes and kills most of the X-Men, turning a few of them into vampires as well, and then controlling them and others with hypnosis. With his vampire army, he goes forth to take on all of New York City and then eventually the world. It's a fun, quick issue that explores an interesting question in a what-if context, but if you really take the character seriously and consider his powers, Lord of Vampires Wolverine is a very powerful variant. Wolverine is already an extremely powerful superhero, but with the ability to turn others into mindless vampires and then control them with mind powers, he becomes nearly unstoppable. At number 6, we have Zombie Wolverine. This variant is, on its own, maybe not the most powerful out of them all, considering he's made up of decaying flesh. But due to circumstance, he actually ends up being a real issue for his friends and enemies alike. During a fight against the Silver Surfer, this version of Wolverine loses his right arm and actually has it replaced by a cybernetic one. Not only that, but zombie Wolverine also gains cosmic powers after killing and then devouring the corpse of the Silver Surfer. So aside from an insatiable hunger as a driving force for this variant, he's also got the whole cosmic power thing on his side, as well as a nifty cybernetic arm. Beware of zombie Wolverine, he means business. At number 5 we have Darkclaw. This is a fun one, but it's also arguably a very underestimated Wolverine variant, all things considered. For those of you who don't know Darkclaw, he's basically a combination between Wolverine and Batman. The Amalgam comics showed different heroes from the Marvel Universe merging with those of the DC Universe, and the result of Wolverine and Batman coming together is a pretty powerful new hero. There's not much more to report than the obvious, which is just that Wolverine and Batman's abilities are combined. But if you really think about it, there's only power gain for Wolverine in this amalgamation. With all the power that Wolverine already has, met with the innovative genius mind of Bruce Wayne, the possibilities for this variant are basically endless. At number 4 we have General James Howlett from Earth 12025. Appearing mostly in Volume 2 of Extreme X-Men, this highly decorated hero is known to be the most powerful in this reality. This version of Wolverine's bones are actually coated in adamantine, which is a mystical metal that comes from the ancient Greek gods of Olympus. The metal keeps him immune from telepathy, and it's also known to be more powerful than adamantium. Adamantine, adamantium. They're different. Adamantium, of course, being the one that the original Wolverine relies on. The adamantine is so strong that it even keeps Wolverine safe from attacks from Thor's hammer. Plus, this guy has some pretty cool titles attached to his name and is an explorer working for the government of Canada. So he just seems like a cool dude on top of everything else. Did I say dude? I meant god. He's basically a god. At number 3 we have Weapon H. So this variant is the result of what happens when you mix together Wolverine and the Hulk into one guy. And what you get is a superpowered Hulk with an adamantium skeleton and of course the retractable claws. But he still has the ability to switch back to his human form on command despite his frame being coated in the metal. The only downside for this variant that I could think of is the same thing that gives the Hulk a disadvantage. His rage can sometimes be too much for him to handle, keeping him from making sound tactical decisions at times. But regardless, the sheer power that this variant holds is enough, as Dr. Alba theorizes, to kill every living thing on Earth. This is a relatively new character, so I'm interested to see where he goes. I guess we'll all see. At number 2 we have Weapon Omega. Aside from just looking pretty cool, Weapon Omega is undoubtedly one of the most powerful variants of Wolverine in any reality. This guy has all the powers of Wolverine with the added abilities of Apocalypse. So yes, he's basically immortal and can teleport, and also use mind control, shift in size on command, and fly. Not to mention the huge blaster that's replaced one of his claw arms, and the crazy armor that he's got equipped at all times as well. Also remember, he's still got his healing abilities, even if someone did get close enough to do any damage on this guy, which I doubt is a very easy feat to accomplish, and sort of pointless considering he never dies. Weapon Omega eventually takes over for Apocalypse as leader of the Horsemen, solidifying his position as one of the most powerful variants of Wolverine in his political influence as well. Finally, at number 1, I'm putting Phoenix Force Wolverine, because there's really no comparing Phoenix Force to any other entity in terms of power, at least as far as Wolverine variants go. When possessed by Phoenix Force, Wolverine has the ability to manipulate matter at will, as well as warping reality and the fabric of the multiverse. Not to mention, if he wanted to, he could do what Dark Phoenix does and gain more power by consuming the energy of stars throughout the cosmos, if he so chooses. It's almost like his adamantium claws don't really add any extra gusta to his power set at this point, because instead of taking a stab at someone, he could just, you know, think about them being a pile of ashes and it would happen. He's such a powerful variant that he eventually reigns over the cosmos in a future alternate reality, something that old King Thor observes for himself. So yeah, Phoenix Force Wolverine at number 1.
Number 10, Jessica Spectre. Admittedly, we don't really know what Jessica's power level is at. What we do know is that she hails from an alternate reality designated Earth 8753. In this reality, Mark is dying, and it is his daughter, Jessica, who is destined to take up his mantle after he passes. He has been training her for years, and Jessica has chosen to follow in different but similar footsteps to him. Being extremely studious, she has years of physical training, becoming a gifted martial artist and weapons expert, and is an accomplished accomplished student studying to become an archaeologist. One night when Mark is injured and lays dying, she learns of a secret identity as Moon Knight and agrees to take up the mantle as he passes on. Jessica is only briefly mentioned and shown in the collection known as Marvel Knights Millennial Visions from 2001. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that subscribe button. Number 9. Vampire Moon Knight. While not explicitly shown in action and more kinda like just mentioned, Moon Knight in the reality of Earth 9140 was a vampire. The reality is one we explore in the 1989 What If series in issue number 24. Here we answer the question, what if Wolverine was Lord of the Vampires? And I guess we kind of ignore the fact that usually Wolverine can't stay as a vampire because of his healing factor. But the answer in this case is many superheroes would end up as vampires at his side, Mark Spector's Moon Knight included. However, while I think a vampire version of Moon Knight is super fitting and super cool, having both the powers of Moon Knight as well as a vampire combined, which means he'd always be at peak power since he only ever came out in the nighttime, he was sadly very short-lived. In the end, the Montesi formula is still used to defeat the vampires and is actually read out by Wolverine himself this time around, who in the end regains enough of his humanity to fight back against his monstrous nature. What a twist. Number 8. Crescent Moon. Crescent Moon is an interesting female alternate version of the character. We don't know her true name, only her superhero name, but we do know who her enemy was. Grey Wing. She and her army of religious warriors fought against Grey Wing, as was glimpsed in the pages of the 90s comic Mark Spector Moon Knight issue number 42. Here, Crescent Moon is tragically defeated by the evil villainous doppelganger of Moon Knight known as Moonshade, who travels to alternate realities in the hopes of increasing his power by consuming the life force energy of other Moon Knight alternates in the multiverse. We don't know much about the world Crescent Moon hails from outside of what we know about her. However, it is believed to be designated Earth 920942. Unfortunately, the last and first appearance of this alternate happens in that issue number 42, so sad. Personally, I think Crescent Moon could have her own little spin-off. I'd like to learn more about her. Number 7. Spectre. Spectre is one of the alternate versions of Moon Knight that we see from the 2015 Secret Wars event. He appears first in Master of Kung Fu, which is a Secret Wars Battle World tie-in miniseries. Here, he is revealed to be a master martial artist known as the Master of the Faces of the Moon, a school of martial arts from Kunlun. Spectre does not beat Shang-Chi in the Tournament of the 13 Chambers, but he does manage to hold his own considering. Number 6. Zombieverse Moon Knight. Although not initially a zombie version of Moon Knight himself, this version of Moon Knight hails from the reality of Earth 2149, also sometimes referred to as Earth Z, standing of course for zombie. Here, a rogue virus came to Earth and then turned everyone, heroes and villains and of course civilians included, into zombies. Moon Knight seems to get his powers from the moon here, but despite the fact that he is weaker during the day, he is powerful enough to seemingly survive quite late into the Marvel zombie story. Initially, it was actually believed that he was killed after the formation of the Power Cosmic Zombies team. However, he is later shown to be alive and well during a fight with Earth 616's Deadpool. Or well, I guess I should say he was alive and well. Sometime between the Power Cosmic Zombies coming into power and the series Deadpool Mark with a Mouth, Moon Knight becomes zombified and ends up being killed by Deadpool of Earth 616 in issue number 8 of Deadpool Mark with a Mouth after Deadpool decapitates him. Which, is kind of what you do to zombies to get rid of them. Although, then there's Headpool, so I don't know if Moon Knight would really be dead. Could just be a talking head. Number 5. Earth X. This version of Moon Knight hails from the alternate reality of Earth 9997, also known as Earth X. Here, Moon Knight had similar powers to his Earth 616 counterpart, but was also, for a time, considered immortal and unable to die. This was as a result of the Reanimator Stone. Moon Knight became fixated on protecting the stone against those who would use it for more insidious purposes, but eventually it was retrieved by the hero Mar-Vell, with Moon Knight's permission, and taken to the realm of the dead. This version of Moon Knight was also a bit more scary in terms of his standard fights, instead of using the preferred traditional weapons that we know Moon Knight for, which themselves in the hands of Mark Spector can be pretty frightening. He preferred to actually fight with guns. Personally, I think that is a preference that makes him even more frightening. I wouldn't want to fight Moon Knight with guns. And I know what you're all thinking, sometimes he fights with guns, Amanda, and yes, but that's not usually what we know him for. Unless we're talking about Earth X, and then that is what we know him for there. Number 4, Earth Legacy. On Earth Legacy, designated as Earth 8545, Moon Knight falls to the same fate as the rest of humanity. Here, the Legacy virus kills many, before Warlock, in an effort to save his soul self-friend, Cypher, merges with his pal. As a result, the Legacy virus actually mutates instead, becoming part Technarch. This doesn't have the desired effect that Warlock had hoped, and instead only makes the virus more infectious and deadly. It spreads to the rest of the population, consuming pretty much all organic life. Moon Knight himself is also infected by this new version of the Legacy virus, but on the sort of positive side, as a result, does get a sort of combination when it comes to his power set of both his own and Warlock's abilities and powers. Kind of a silver lining. I mean, everyone's kinda, I think, evil, but you know. Number 3, Moonwing. Despite being an amalgam character, there is a lot that Moonwing has in common with the Moon Knight of Earth 616, mainly that his powers fluctuate based on the phase of the moon. During a full moon, Moonwing is considered to be at his most powerful. This is similar to the suggested power of Moon Knight from Marvel's Earth 616, who is often implied to be stronger at night and more so during a full moon. Moonwing, also known as Richard Grayson, is actually a combination of both Moon Knight from Marvel and Nightwing from DC, as an amalgam character. The Amalgam Universe was known as a crossover world which saw DC and Marvel characters and teams blended together into single entities. As such, Moonwing has the powers and abilities of both characters and also uses both of their signature weapons in combat, both fighting with Moon Knight's truncheon as well as Nightwing's Eskrima sticks. Number 2, Ultimate Moon Knight. Ultimate Moon Knight is known by the name of Stephen Grant instead of the more common Mark Spector, although it is possible that Mark is his true main identity, or perhaps in the Ultimate Universe, Stephen is the main identity, who knows. Because even in this alternate reality, he also has dissociative identity disorder. Grant hails from the universe of Earth 1610, also known as the Ultimate Universe, a comic book world and line made to offer a sort of a bit of a gritty twist on the main continuity of Earth 616, and which aimed at making it easier for new fans to jump into a narrative without having to worry about being bogged down by years of comic book history and continuity. This version of Moon Knight appeared to straight up just have superpowers, although it's not explicitly confirmed, and it's not known if they come from Khonshu or perhaps the moon, as suggested in the main continuity, or perhaps both of those things, because you know, Khonshu is the god of the moon. Among his feats, he appears to be super strong, durable, fast, and also have perhaps some kind of healing factor. In issue number 110 of Ultimate Spider-Man, while under the guise of Ronin, we witness him take a shot to the head point blank and seemingly heal from it enough to stand back up and wander around. I mean, he's holding his head, so obviously he's in some pain, but still, that's healing, I think. This is also after he was laying face down in a river for who knows how long, either like a few minutes or could have been even like a few hours. I don't think there's a time that's mentioned in the panels, so that seems to be doubly dead to me. Get shot in the head and then you're laying down. I don't know about that. Number 1, Age of Khonshu Moon Knight. Technically, this Moon Knight is not an alternate, as he hails from Earth 616, but he's honestly too cool for me to not mention, so I kinda gotta talk about him. Although this was a very specific time in Moon Knight's life where he was extremely boosted in terms of his power set, so it's like still main continuity, but we can like call it a niche time. It's not really an alternate though, to be clear, or a variant. This period of Moon Knight's career as a vigilante saw him team up with Khonshu, who is in fact real in this story, to help him defeat Mephisto. In order to do so, Khonshu pits Moon Knight against the Avengers so that he can get enough power for Khonshu to take on Mephisto with. Moon Knight, during Age of Khonshu as such, took all the main powers and artifacts of the Avengers, stealing Thor's hammer, Ghost Rider's car, and even taking the Phoenix Force for himself temporarily.
Number 10, Sideburn the Regenerating Planet. When Galactica, the daughter of Galactus, is looking for her next meal in issue 1 of her self-titled comic, she finds Earth, a lovely little snack. But while looking at her dinner option, she comes upon Wolverine. Realizing his mutant regenerative abilities, she formulates an idea of using a bit of his harvested DNA with a bit of celestial power to create Sideburn the Regenerating Planet, a planet-sized Galactus meal that would grow back after each feasting, the perfect unlimited food source that would give her billions of years of meals. Unfortunately, she just as quickly realizes that a planet made up of Canadian mutant DNA like this would be highly unstable. Unfortunate, because I'd love to see this guy floating through the galaxy of the regular Marvel universe.
Number 9. Cancerous Professor X. In the alternate universe of Earth 10,011, otherwise known as the Cancerverse, death was defeated by life and the ancient eldritch beings known as the Many-Angled One. The heroes of this Earth began to worship the Many-Angled Ones, who transformed the heroes, granting them new powers, but also corrupting and mutating them due to the Many-Angled One's demonic natures. One of the consequences of this was that many of the heroes became deformed by cancerous tumors running amok. Although many of the X-Men were affected, such as Wolverine, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Storm, the most terrifying of these beings was Professor X, who developed a massive cranium as well as multiple glowing red eyes. Now, Professor X can be pretty creepy at the best of times, but this is taking it to a whole other level.
Number 8. Franken Castle. After he was taken out by Daken on orders from Norman Osborn during the Dark Reign event, Frank Castle, yes, the Punisher, was revived by the Legion of Monsters as an undead zombie-like monster known as Franken Castle. The Legion resurrected Frank to recruit him in their fight against the villain known as Hellsguard, who was systematically killing off monsters using samurai-like assassins. Although he originally refused, Frank got involved after seeing innocent child monsters being dispatched as well, and that is not something Frank is willing to abide. He went on to slay hordes of Hellsguard's men. It's honestly an incredibly interesting moment in Frank Castle's history, and it got this version of Frank moved to Earth 666. He also nearly enacted revenge against Daken, being stopped by Wolverine before he was returned to his human form through the Bloodstone.
Number 7. Zombie Scarlet Witch. On Earth 2149, things were relatively similar to Earth 616 until one day, a traveler from an alternate dimension showed up at Avengers Mansion, warning of the Earth's impending doom at the hands of an army of the dead. Who was this interdimensional traveler? None other than the groovy Ash Williams from the Evil Dead franchise. The heroes ignore this strange and irritating man, but soon after they discover that the threat is real and they are bitten by the zombie horde and transformed into the living dead. Ash eventually teams up with Earth's Scarlet Witch and Dazzler to try and find the Book of the Dead and save the Earth, but Wanda was eventually bitten by a zombified Punisher and turned into a zombie herself. Now, in the zombie universe, there are plenty of zombie heroes to choose from, such as Captain America, Spider-Man, and even Howard the Duck. But for this list, we decided to go with Scarlet Witch, as her incredible powers make her a terrifying force to be reckoned with under the best of circumstances. But the idea of all that power having an insatiable taste for human flesh is even worse.
Number 6. Ice Giant Thor. In What If Thor in 2018, we got the story of what if Thor was raised by frost giants. Laufey, the king of the frost giants, defeats Odin in their battle so long ago, and just as Odin took the infant Loki, Laufey takes the kid Thor and raises him as his own. Loki is obviously here as well, and like usual, they form a pretty tight bond as adoptive brothers. Unfortunately, due to Thor's strength and skill in battle, not to mention his fondness for summoning the power of lightning, he is praised among the frost giants and by Laufey himself, who begins to completely forget Loki, his actual true son. Instead, Loki finds the captured Freya in the dungeons and she teaches him how to use magic. Loki eventually busts her out of prison and together they attempt to escape to Midgard. They go to the ruins of Asgard and attempt to repair the Rainbow Bridge until Thor and Laufey show up. Loki ends the life of his father while Thor unknowingly ends his mother with a blast from his giant ice hammer, Ice Crusher. Thor almost takes out his brother as well, but at the last minute, he lets him go. We don't know what happens next, only that Loki went to Midgard, had kids and a family, and apparently became a hero. It actually ends on a rather sweet note.
Number 5. Vampire Daredevil. When Magneto's ultimatum wave devastated New York in the Ultimate Universe, one of the victims of the flood was the original Daredevil, Matt Murdock. Feeling that Hell's Kitchen needed its champion, Murdock's old mentor, Stick, sought out Raymond Connor to become Matt's replacement. Like Matt, Raymond was blinded in an accident and developed similar abilities. After being trained by Stick, Raymond took on the Daredevil mantle, using a yellow and red variation of Matt's red costume. This new hero's career was cut extremely short when he was bitten by a vampire version of the Nerd Hulk. This turned the new Daredevil into a terrifying and effective vampire, even managing to bite Captain America and defeat Blade in combat. Thankfully, before he could land the killing blow, he was teleported to Iran, where he perished in the sun.
Number 4. Steel Corpse. In Marvel's Age of X universe, the X-Men never existed to represent mutants, and as a result, the mutant population had become the ultimate enemy. In response to this, the mutant Magneto used his powers to literally steal buildings from New York and form Fortress X, a safe haven for mutant kind. This led to the creation of a team of non-mutant heroes by General Frank Castle and led by Captain America to hunt down this resistance of mutants. Among the members of this team was a version of Iron Man named Steel Corpse. This Iron Man had become infected by a technological virus that fused him with his armor. Inside the armor, Iron Man has slowly been digested by the suit over the decades since he was trapped inside. The worst part is that this group of Avengers eventually decided that they weren't going to attack the mutants who were just trying to survive. So the government takes control of Steel Corpse and forces the suit to attack. It's twisted, it's sick, and it's absolutely terrifying to imagine being slowly consumed by a suit of armor you can literally never escape.
Number 3. The Maker. Despite having his flaws, Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four is an important and heroic figure in the Marvel Universe. Despite his heroics, we did witness a spectacular fall from grace for Reed in the Ultimate Comics universe, otherwise known as Earth 1610. In this universe, Magneto created a doomsday weapon called the Ultimatum Wave, which caused a tidal wave that killed thousands of people. This, combined with the stress of the Fantastic Four breaking up and Sue Storm rejecting his marriage proposal, caused Reed to snap and blow up his childhood home to fake his death, killing his family in the process. He went on to use aliens under his control to attack the heroes. He was eventually defeated and disfigured by the Human Torch and flung into the negative zone. Reed returned to Earth and took on the identity of the Maker and set out on a twisted quest to make the world perfect. He killed all the Asgardians in an attempt to understand Thor's power and used antimatter to attack Washington, D.C., killing POTUS, his cabinet, and all of Congress. The Maker went on to do a lot of twisted stuff, fighting the heroes of his own Earth as well as the heroes of Earth 616, proving that if not kept in check by a strong moral compass, Mr. Fantastic's amazing mind can be the ultimate source of terror.
Number 2. Space Punisher Hulk. Space Punisher Hulk has only appeared in 2 comic books, but despite that, he has shown that he is completely terrifying. For starters, he is a completely separate entity from Bruce Banner, whose body is literally trapped inside Space Punisher Hulk. This means that nothing that happens to Bruce Banner affects the Hulk. Space Punisher Hulk, while having all the powers of the Hulk, also has an extra set of arms and is quite a bit taller. He is described as a destructive killing machine, well known for destroying spaceships, defeating the Fantastic Four, ripping off the Thing's hand and tying up Mr. Fantastic in a knot in the process. He has taken out Doc Samson with his own hair, bit straight through Sabretooth, and de-lifed Deadpool by literally tearing off his head, which shouldn't actually work, but I digress. He defeated and ended the lives of 6 Watchers single-handedly, he broke the leader's back in combat, and he also ripped out Bruce Banner from his own chest. He is virtually invulnerable, seemingly indestructible and invincible. He can move faster than light and pass through barriers of existence and reality. The Hulk is scary on a regular day. Space Punisher Hulk? No thanks, I'm good.
Number 1. Spider-Man. On Earth 11,580, Peter Parker was taking a tour of a lab that was conducting radiation experiments on a colony of spiders. Peter fell into the spider habitat and was promptly devoured by the spiders. In an odd twist of fate not dissimilar to the villain Swarm, the spiders absorbed Peter's consciousness and became a hive mind that formed together to masquerade as a human and fight crime, thus becoming Spider-Man. Spider-Man fought crime for a time, but soon developed a taste for human flesh. The spiders managed to hide this for a time and were recruited by the superior Spider-Man in his multiversal quest to defeat the villainous Inheritors. He eventually betrayed Otto by joining forces with the Norman Osborn Spider-Man of Earth 44,145 to try and destroy the Web of Life. This plan failed, but Spider-Man did manage to spread his spiders across the multiverse, giving them a foothold in every different reality.
Number 10. Throg. starting the list off light. He might be small, but he's still pretty mighty. Throg wasn't always a frog. In fact, at one point he was a human named Simon Walterson. He ended up getting help from a witch, but after being unable to pay her, found himself transformed into a frog. Don't you hate when that happens? He befriended Thor back when he was also transformed into a frog by his brother Loki. The two teamed up to help a frog king defend against an army of rats. Simon would go on to become his own version of Frog Thor after a piece of Mjolnir was broken off. This tiny piece was wielded by Simon, who decided to become his own version of the hero while in his frog form. As a frog, he goes by the name Puddle Gulp as well. Puddle Gulp. So if you ever see Puddle Gulp or Simon, that's the Rog. Hey. Number 9. Thunderstrike. While Eric Masterson isn't more powerful than 616 Thor, he was still pretty powerful in regards to general power. He was considered worthy enough to wield Mjolnir and for a time was merged with Thor, in essence becoming that hero. However, he's probably better known for his time as Thunderstrike, when he wielded an Uru-crafted mace. He was fairly short-lived as a character, but whether he was Thor or Thunderstrike, he had powers similar to other Asgardians while in his transformed state. He was super strong, durable, tough, quick, and had a healing factor. In addition to that, with his Thunderstrike mace, he was also capable of teleportation, possibly on a multiversal level, which I think is pretty powerful. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you are loving our channel, be sure to show some love for us by heading on over to Facebook and giving us a follow over there. Number 8. War Thor. War Thor is the name that Volstagg took when he became Thor. This all went down during the time that Jane Foster was Thor and the usual 616 Thor was simply known by the name of Odinson. Volstagg became War Thor due to him seizing the Mjolnir of an alternate reality, which was unclaimed. This version of the hammer, however, seemed to have some kind of effect on his mind, as it made him, kind of violent and severe in comparison to how Thor would usually act. Probably hence his name War Thor. After Light Elf refugees were attacked by fire demons from Muspelheim, he ended up going to Muspelheim itself, actively taking on the whole realm in battle and threatening to wipe out all life there with a massive flood. Jane Foster as Thor was forced to fight against War Thor and eventually managed to ascertain that he was Volstagg, using her friendship with him to calm him down. Number 7. MCU Thor. Thor in the MCU is pretty powerful, although he still seems to be on a journey towards becoming the most powerful he can ever be within this universe. Recently, he grew quite a bit when it came to his power levels, as he was forced to find a new way to harness his power when separated from Mjolnir, which was destroyed by his sister Hela. Hela destroys Mjolnir at the beginning of Thor Ragnarok, forcing Thor to channel the power within himself, and earning him the nickname of Sparkle Fingers from the Grandmaster. Since then, Thor lost an eye, but managed to protect his people against Hela and the inevitable destruction of Asgard via Ragnarok, using this prophesied end to basically defeat his sister. So although Asgard is destroyed, it lives on in Asgardians. Yay! Thor was unfortunately no match for Thanos in space, although he did actually almost defeat Thanos in Infinity War single-handedly, although yeah, I guess in the end he didn't. However, he did go on to find a home for his people under the leadership of Valkyrie on Earth, creating sort of a new Asgard, if you will. We don't know where he's off to next, but it is possible we could see him take up the mantle of leader from Valkyrie, finally accepting his own fate as the next Allfather and inevitably taking Odin's place. That is after he goes on some adventures with the Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm sure. The Asgardians of the Galaxy? Number 6. Ultimate Thor. Ultimate Thor was an interesting version of the character. He hails from the reality of Earth 1610, and initially we were led to believe that this alternate wasn't actually even Thor, but instead was just a guy who kinda like thought he was Thor and was possibly suffering from delusions, who was named Thorleif Gorman. He had a suit which helped him to fight against his enemies. Over time, it would be revealed that Thorleif Gorman was indeed the latest incarnation of Thor Odinson, as memories came flooding back to him. This version of Thor wasn't as reliant on Mjolnir as some other versions of Thor are, which makes him in some ways more powerful. Also, that suit. Number 5. Jane Foster. Simply known as Thor, and for a time known in terms of her series as Mighty Thor. While we know this version of the character was actually Jane Foster, at first in the comics it actually was a mystery as to who the woman behind the hammer was. Jane Foster became Thor after Thor Odinson was deemed unworthy, with the hammer actually calling out to her. This was also at a time that Jane was sick with cancer, so she had to be strong in many different ways, and it was exceedingly impressive that she decided to remain as Thor, considering the revelation that each time she transformed transformed into the hero, her body was actually cleared of all toxins, including her chemotherapy treatments, meaning that every time Jane became that hero, she in essence went back to square one with her treatment, making her sicker and sicker over time. Jane even chose to continue being Thor when her life was at stake, and she did end up dying, sacrificing herself to protect the world against Mangog. Fortunately, she would be resurrected by Odin afterward and become known as the hero Valkyrie, which is also like a really big moment for Jane Foster since Odin, up to that point, never really liked Jane. He was always giving her a hard time. Number 4. Herald of Thunder. This version of Thor folks will be most familiar with, probably from the game Fortnite. But he's actually inspired by Donny Cates' current run on Thor, who exists in main continuity. So even if you're like, Herald of Thunder, that's a Fortnite thing. It's actually also a comics thing. Just like in the comics, Thor is convinced by Galactus to join up with him as a threat greater than Galactus is apparently on its way, known as the Black Winter. The Black Winter is literally a cosmic sort of, well, winter storm that in essence destroys everything it touches with its snowfall. So, like snow, but if it was like a whiteout for existence instead of just, small frozen bits of water. Much worse than snow. In the game Fortnite, Thor agrees to join Galactus in his fight against Black Winter and becomes his Herald of Thunder, becoming imbued with the power cosmic. Number 3. Rune King Thor. Rune King Thor, although often referred to as an alternate version of the character, is actually from the main continuity. He's more like a very distinct period in time in Thor's life, which ends up in essence getting somewhat reset. In other words, he's kind of main continuity, kind of alternate continuity. What makes him so powerful? Well, this is a version of Thor who comes to be because he's facing Ragnarok and looking for a way to stop it. He ends up gaining the power of the Odin Force and rune magic as well. He gains the Odin Force after Odin dies again. Odin has died a lot. Then there is a whole tangential reality that ends up being created where this Thor rules Earth, but I guess technically that's also like now an alternate future version of this version of Rune King Thor. So yeah. Oh boy. Anyways, this Rune King Thor would not be able to avoid Ragnarok in the end and would end up being reset as a result of all of the death that was part of that whole colossal event, along with the other gods and goddesses of Asgard. So that's why Thor isn't quite like Rune King Thor right now in the main continuity, despite this version being a part of the main continuity. Because yeah, he like lost both his eyes. So, lost both his eyes, and yet Thor, I think, is back to having both his eyes. He lost both his eyes, then he had his eyes, then he lost an eye. Does he have both of his eyes back now? I don't know. I can't keep track of how many eyes Thor has. Changes all the time. Number 2. All-Father Thor. While many people still say that Rune King Thor is one of the most powerful versions, and he definitely is, I think the real power lies in a potential alternate future version of Thor known as Old King Thor or All-Father Thor, or simply just as King Thor. Any of these names is acceptable and correct. So if you've heard someone say one and you're like, wait, which one is it? It's all, there's like literally 15 to 20 names actually this character goes by, so they're all right. This version of Thor was once believed to be the true future of Thor, but has since been relegated to kind of an alternate future, with him hailing from the possible future of Earth 14412. Although this Thor has alluded to the fact that if 616 Thor was to die, it would actually affect him, so not sure how connected they are still. In this reality, Thor would not only defeat Gore the God Butcher, Galactus, a souped up version of his brother Loki, a souped up version of Doctor Doom, and an even more powerful returning Gore the God Butcher, but he also at one point wielded the Phoenix Force. This all went down after All-Father Thor faced off against Old Man Phoenix, his friend Logan, who had become the host of that force. While Thor lost that fight, the two ended up teaming up together to save Earth from a version of Doom who was super power boosted by various artifacts and powers that he'd been collecting. In the end, Phoenix sacrificed himself to pass on the power of the Force to Thor so that he might stand a chance in defeating Doom, which he ultimately did. Number 1. Herald of None. Herald of None is technically the Thor we have in main continuity currently. This is a period in Thor's life where he basically took all of Galactus's power in order to defeat Black Winter, going from his herald to kind of like renouncing Galactus and ultimately defeating him so that he might destroy the Black Winter, which threatened the existence of everything in the multiverse and the multiverse itself. Doing this allowed Thor to be successful in taking out Black Winter, reducing it to a mere snowflake, one single snowflake. This snowflake also allowed Thor a glimpse into a potential future when it melted on his hand, where he saw Thanos had returned, leading perhaps an army of undead Marvel heroes who were under his influence as he wielded an Infinity Stone encrusted version of Mjolnir. I don't know if we know yet about this future, when it's coming to pass, but I love when comics are like, look at this future, this could happen. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. Give it to me, give me this future.
Number 10. Lord Iron. I will never turn up the chance to talk about Marvel 1602, otherwise known as Earth 311. This This Earth takes a bunch of the Marvel characters we love and plops them in the Elizabethan era. And yes, that includes Iron Man. Going by the name Anthony Stark and Lord Iron, his armor is powered by quote-unquote lightning bottles, and was created when Anthony was captured in the Holy Land during the English-Spanish Wars, and treated rather harshly by the Hulk, resulting in the requirement of the suit to survive. Anthony is sent on a mission to hunt down Banner in the New World with his technologically advanced suit. Now look, this suit in comparison to other versions of Iron Man, it's not the most advanced and powerful suit, but when looked at with the scope of the technology at the time, it's centuries ahead of its time, being nearly on par with base Iron Man armors, only it has a super sweet lightning sword. Like, damn bro, it's nice.
Number 9. Original Tony. Technically I'm talking about a version of 616 Tony here, but this isn't even really like the 616 Tony. Not the one we have now anyways, although at one point this was the 616 Tony. This version of Tony ended up getting amalgamated with his younger self to give us the version that we have now, because this version ended up fighting his younger self. Yep, it all happened as part of the Crossing event. Ah yes, the Crossing event, what a marvelous time. During that event it was revealed that Tony was actually a sleeper agent for Immortus, aka an alternate name and persona of Kang the Conqueror's. He is activated and ends up becoming somewhat unstoppable when it comes to the Avengers' power to defeat him, and Kang. Instead, they enlist the help of a younger Tony Stark from the past, who actually almost dies fighting against his older self. In the end, however, Tony has a change of heart, and he basically sacrifices himself to save his friends and the world from Kang. However, as I said, this version of him would later be resurrected and then amalgamated with the younger Tony, who remained in 616 in his place. Together, they would give us the Tony Stark that we know and love today in the comics.
Number 8. Exiles. Tony Stark, the undisputed monarch of Earth. What? Take a man with the intelligence, wealth, and power of Anthony Stark and make him unbothered by any kind of sense of morality. That's a man who can bring the world to its knees, but has the sense to not let them know it, and then be begged to take charge. Tony Stark of Earth 42777 acquired every world conglomerate. He organized a mutant war against humanity and then defeated their leader, Magneto, created a worldwide famine, the likes of which was never seen before, and then invented the cures and vaccines to fix it, and then he got elected president. He developed weather controlling technologies to create biblical level natural disasters in Europe and Asia, having them beg for help to the point of giving up control. Central America and Canada had economic down spirals that brought them into the fold too, and he made a deal with Dr. Doom, who had attacked the Capitol and then taken out all the other democratic leaders in America, who he also destroyed after receiving a blast to the face that left him disfigured just like Emperor Palpatine. He's de-lifed the Hulk. This version of Tony Stark is ruthless and powerful.
Number 7. Superior Iron Man. Superior Iron Man is actually a version of Tony from the main continuity, but he's so devious and fantastic that I had to include him. What can I say? I'm obviously a sucker for an evil villain version of Tony Stark, as this is the second one that I've mentioned on this list. I just feel like Tony has so much potential as an amazing villain, and honestly, I would rather see him as a villain than a hero. I know that might be a hot take, but there it is. And you might even say he's not just an amazing villain, he's a superior villain. Ho-ho! Superior Iron Man came about as a result of Iron Man avoiding the re-reversal of alignments back to normal near the end of Axis. You see, Scarlet Witch had cast a spell which accidentally inverted the alignment of a good number of Marvel's premium heroes and villains. Well, she meant to invert them, but not all of them. She meant to invert one of them, and then everyone else got affected too. Oops. Among them was Tony. When this was reversed, so Tony would go back from being evil to good once more, the super smart Iron Man found a way to shield himself, resisting the reversal back to being a hero. Instead, he remained a villain who simply passed himself off as a hero. This version of Tony isn't just smart, he's diabolical, and his lack of ethics means he's willing to do things that his regular, more heroic 616 self wouldn't.
Number 6. Ultimate Universe. Having your mind and body altered by an infinity gem sounds like it could go pretty much anywhere, but fittingly for Tony Stark, it led to him being able to physically and mentally interact with pretty much any computer ever. That's a pretty good ability for someone who flies around in a technological suit of armor. The Antonio Stark of Earth 1610, or the Ultimate Universe, has basically become part man, part machine, being able to project his mind into computers and androids, allowing him to be nigh unkillable, proven when the Master, Reed Richards, seemingly brought his demise, but he became a non-physical entity which could manifest itself via computer systems. When actually physically inhabiting an Iron Man armor, he gains the usual abilities, plus force fields and cloaking. He's also got nanites in his bloodstream that he uses to control his suits, as well as open locks, defuse boom booms, and interact with all forms of tech. This Ultimate Universe Iron Man, like quite a few of the other Ultimate Universe characters, is pretty ultimate.
Number 5. Darkhold Iron Man. As we glimpse into the Darkhold, we get to see into the much darker reality of Earth 21129 when it comes to Tony Stark's tale. Here in Darkhold Iron Man, issue number 1, we meet Tony Stark, who becomes obsessed with the armor that he's building, despite the fact that once in said pieces of armor, they cannot be removed, as they bond to Tony in such a way that removing the armor also removes his skin. In essence, we learn that the armor is kinda like feeding on Tony Stark's organic makeup, fully bonding with him. When he wears the helmet, this becomes evident when we learn that skin and bone are melting away, as the suit has, well, no need of them, because they're like, hey, we're armor, so you don't need that. This Tony Stark is eerily powerful as he threatens to take over the world with his technology, offering everyone the infinite and permanent safety of his suits, at the cost of their own organic lives and bodies.
Number 4. Iron Goblin. Earth 19919, or the Spider Island, basically saw the city of New York taken over by the Spider Queen, who infected millions of people, including heroes, turning them into monstrous spider people. Agent Venom of the Resistance began using other monster transforming techniques. This includes injecting the Hulk with the Lizard Serum, using the Godstone to turn Captain America into a werewolf, and Captain Marvel was turned into a living vampire. For Iron Man, he was sprayed with the Goblin formula used by Norman Osborn to save him. This gave Tony Stark super strength, speed, stamina, durability, agility, reflexes, and a regenerative healing factor. You know, the superhero starter pack of abilities, plus all the technology of the Iron Man suit. Unfortunately, the serum also has the side effect of making people maniacal, paranoid, irrational, and illogical. Not wanting to go fully insane and to make up for his crimes as an arms dealer, the Goblin Iron Man wielded the Ebony Blade, one of the most powerful weapons in the Marvel Universe, and sacrificed himself to save the Resistance.
Number 3. Iron Hammer. Iron Hammer is an amalgamation of Iron Man and Thor from the Pocket Dimension universe known as Warp World. Warp World was created when Gamora gained the power of the Infinity Stones and used them to fold the universe in half, merging souls together in doing so to create amalgamated heroes and villains, then feeding those souls to the Soul Gem. Iron Hammer is Stark Odinson, the son of Howard Odin, who is part businessman, part Asgardian god. Iron Hammer wields a hammer and also wears a spiffy set of armor, having the powers of both the 616 versions of both of these heroes.
Number 2. Iron Lantern. Ah, yes, the Amalgam Universe, combining the world's two biggest comic book companies, DC and Marvel, pitting popular characters from both sides against each other and even fusing some characters together. One incredibly cool amalgamation would be between Iron Man and Green Lantern. Harold Stark, HAL for short, was the founder of Stark Aircraft, and while test flying a prototype aircraft, it suddenly took off on its own to a crashed alien spaceship, and it too crashed. The crash left shards of metal in Stark's chest, which, after meeting the dying alien Romancer, Stark survived using an alien battery, suspiciously in the shape of a lantern, to build a suit of armor. This armor not only kept him alive though, it gave him the ability to create green solid energy constructs, fire plasma bolts, fly at speeds beyond the speed of light, time travel, it granted him almost unlimited telepathic powers, translation of virtually any language, force field generation, and the ever classic superhuman strength and durability. Yeah, he'll put his hand on your chest.
Number 1. Infamous Iron Man. Who is Infamous Iron Man? Well, he's Dr. Doom as Iron Man. I know this might seem like a controversial pick for our top spot, but walk with me, or I guess just stand with me, because I can't really walk anywhere. Dr. Doom, despite being a villain, is one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel Universe. He's not only a genius, but is the ruler of a nation known as Latveria, wielding all the power of his country, his people, and the nation's resources, as well as being an extremely gifted magic user. In fact, there are even futures where Doom becomes Sorcerer Supreme, and if it weren't for Clea showing up in the 616 universe, he would have become Sorcerer Supreme after Doctor Strange died. Also, a lot of what stops Dr. Doom from winning the day is his role as a heel for the heroes, a villain. So when he decided to take up the mantle of Iron Man in Tony's absence, he became pretty much unstoppable, because now there's no reason for him to technically have to lose battles. He's not a bad guy. Well, he's kind of a bad guy, but he's a good bad guy. Villains even banded together in fear of what action Doom might take against them as Iron Man. And when they did band together, he still showed up and then beat them all. So, yeah.